All right, Joe Biden's campaign is in all-out damage control tonight. Biden Incorporated, they have now been exposed in spite of the media mob's lying, and the cloud of corruption darkens above Joe 30330 and his family's shady dealings. We also have big bombshell news that the media doesn't want you to know. Remember, Biden is now in very hot water over what are credible claims that, in fact, and he's on tape bragging about it, leveraging your tax dollars, 1 billion of them, in your money to get a Ukrainian prosecutor fired. Why would a vice president of the United States want a prosecutor in Ukraine fired? Why? Because he was investigating his son, and even the New York Times tipped him off. Thanks to National Review Online, they have an incredibly detailed timeline of what preceded this blatant quid pro quo. These are the facts. Now, we could go back as far as 2007. It would take the full hour. But let's go back. We will start on December 4th, 2013. Hunter Biden joined his father, Air Force Two, takes a trip to Asia. They stop in China, where his father had a meeting with the Chinese president, and his son was having business meetings. Then in December 2013, literally less than 2 weeks later, Hunter Biden's company inked a $1 billion private equity deal with a subsidiary of the Chinese government's Bank of China. As Peter Schweitzer pointed out in Secret Empires, this was a deal unlike any other Western firm got. It went to Hunter Biden, who had virtually no experience or expertise in China or private equity. You can ask yourself, now, why would Hunter Biden get such a sweetheart deal, $1 billion? Then it became $1.5 billion. You know, we got great big companies, you know, big names like Goldman Sachs or Deutsche Bank. Or why'd they choose Hunter Biden? What area of expertise did he bring to the table that they didn't have? What did he have to offer beyond being the son of America's second most powerful decision maker? Now we'll fast forward to December 2014. Joe Biden appointed the point person for the Obama administration in Ukraine. He was in control of the Ukrainian portfolio. That's right, in control of directing all Western aid dollars into Ukraine, like $1 billion of them. And then a few months later, April 2014, well, Joe Biden's son Hunter scored a lucrative position on the board of Burisma Holdings. That's the Ukrainian energy, oil, gas giant. Again, Hunter Biden, he was paid a lot of money. Now, this time not billions, but this time millions of dollars. And again, he had no experience in oil, gas, energy, or with the country of Ukraine. A great gig. In November 2015, Joe Biden was advised by the New York Times his son Hunter was under investigation by Ukraine authorities. In December 2015, Joe Biden made his first request to the president of Ukraine. Please fire the prosecutor that's leading the corruption investigation into my son and Burisma Holdings. Then in March 2016, John Solomon, reporting right here on this show, Biden knew this prosecutor was investigating his son and getting awfully close to bringing him in for questioning. That's when Biden leveraged, as we have on tape, the $1 billion in aid and forced the Ukrainian president to fire the prosecutor. And as Joe 30330 says, you got 6 hours or you're not getting the $1 billion. Guess what? Son of a bee. They fired him. Prosecutor signed an affidavit. We showed you this earlier. Under the threat of perjury, that he was told this was the reason for his firing. Also, he told John Solomon, ABC News, and the Washington Post the same thing. And while sleepy, creepy, crazy Uncle Joe spins in a million directions, trying to convince voters he knew nothing about any of his son's dealings, well, his little inconvenient picture has arisen. That would be of Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, golfing with, well, Hunter's partner, Devin Archer, in 2014. Remember Archer? He was also on the board of Burisma Holdings and worked at Rosemont Seneca with Hunter Biden. That's the China deal. This photo was taken just months after Hunter Biden teamed up with Burisma Holdings. The media is lying to you and saying, no, there's no evidence. Really? If this was Donald Trump Jr., there would be a ton of evidence. So where's the scrutiny of all of this? Where's the serious investigative reporting? I've reported on this show, journalism in America died. It's dead since '07 and probably way before. Now, profiting off the Biden name is not anything new. It's been going on a long, long time. It was an August piece in Politico magazine. They got it right twice. I got to give them big props tonight. And that detailed how in 2006, Hunter and Joe's younger brother, James, they took over a firm called Paradigm Global Advisors. They apparently sought to use their father's influence to line their own pockets, their brother's influence. They didn't even try to hide it because that piece quotes an executive at the company said the following about Joe 30330's brother James. Oh, don't worry about investors. Don't worry about that. We got people all around the world. They want to invest in Joe Biden. He was, of course, now, important person in government. More boasting. Quote, James Biden made it clear he viewed the fund as a way to take money from rich foreigners who could not legally give money to his older brother or his campaign account. We've got investors lined up in a line of 747s filled with cash, ready to invest in this company. The executive quotes James Biden is saying. Now, can you imagine? Just stop for a moment with all we just told you. What if the person was Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, heck, Ivanka, Barron Trump? Imagine how much the mob and the media would be obsessed with that story. Does that prove my point? Journalism's dead. You know exactly what they'd be doing. They wouldn't be covering for Don Jr. They'd be fanning the flames. Now, remember this hysteria over the Trump Tower meeting. It had nothing to do with Russia collusion. That didn't stop them. Their lies, their smears, their slander, their besmirchment, their speculation, their breathless, hysterical reporting. We do have good news. The media mob, in spite of what they're trying to do, they're doing us a huge favor because we've known a lot of this for a long time. And it's now boomeranging back onto Biden and a shakedown of U.S. taxpayer money that he used to get the Ukrainian prosecutor investigating his son fired. And you know, and I know, and the American people are smart enough to know if the names were reversed, that's all your media mob would be talking about. After 3 years of lies, smearing, besmirchment, conspiracy theories, and a hoax, they haven't learned a thing.